I'm so excited today to have Dan and Lee join us. Dan is another multi-talented photographer. He's done it all. It's hard to even define him. He started in photography when he was little, and I'll let him tell more of the story. But since then, he's become a professional photographer in many different categories of photography, if you will. And he does a lot of commercial work, but he also loves it and has a passion for it, which is, I think, part of the reason that we've hit it off so well. So Dan, welcome to our outdoor photography series. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's the last one was great fun. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun today. So those that don't know me, I've been a photographer for many years. I picked up a camera when I was a kid, and it absolutely fascinated me. I think I cost my mum and dad an arm and a leg in camera roll as I was growing up and getting things wrong most of the time, more than I was right. But I was lucky enough my first job was working in a camera store in a place called Folkestone in Kent, which is in the southeast corner of England. And I was trained by Pentax. I was trained by a couple of other companies which came in and taught us about how to use a camera. Most of it, some of the advice now I look back and think yikes. But I was bitten by the bug, and over the years I started getting into doing more and more commercial work, working a little bit within advertising. I did some weddings for quite a while, although it wasn't really the main thing that I was looking to do at all. I don't think many people wake up and think, oh, I want to be a wedding photographer today. So I started to do one hell of a lot of travel and started to get bookings for commercial work overseas, everything from wildlife to a little bit of action, but mostly in the adventure segment. I have worked within I live in New York, so I still get a lot of interior design photography jobs come in for commercial. But it's really the adventure and travel which really is the juice that I enjoy from the squeeze, so to speak.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
One of the things that people ask about all the time is gear. People love talking tech, and you're an interesting guy because you've shot so many different cameras professionally, and you've worked closely with different manufacturers and have done work for companies like Sony, Lumix, etc. Talk us through some of that evolution and some of the different cameras that you've shot, and maybe walk us into what you're shooting today. And
yeah, so I was for a long time I was a Nikon shooter, and I can tell you a quite an amusing story. So I went to work shooting I used to do a lot of concerts and bits and pieces in Europe, and I was asked to go and do a concert, and Sony had a lot of their artists there, and I can't remember what his name was, but one of the marketing managers for Sony was there, and he had one of the new Sonys with a SLT lens, which it was kind of the forefather, if you like, for mirrorless. So there wasn't a flappy mirror that used to go up inside. It was translucent, so some of the light used to go through to the sensor, and you look through an EVF. And I've been used to shooting with a Nikon with optical, and he put this camera in my hand, and I said, what's that? And he said, just try it. And I'm like, I don't want to use it. And he goes, just try it for the day. Anyway, 3 days later, he had to prize it from my cold, dead hands. So I said, keep the Nikon stuff, I'll shoot with this. And then I shoot on Sony A-mount for many years, and loved it, loved every minute of it. Yeah, so I stayed on there. Now, I tried the Sony E-mount, didn't enjoy it. It was too small for me. And I now shoot Nikon Z, the Z6. Absolutely love it. I think it's a great platform. The menu system feels familiar to me as a previous Nikon shooter. And it just feels well built and fits great in my hand. So I use that, probably not so much my commercial work, and I've just jumped to Lumix Pro, the S Pro, the S1R. Which is a fantastic camera. Absolutely love it, and that really is built as a durable camera. It's heavy. It's not a light mirrorless. Everyone associates mirrorless with needing to be small, and Lumix have taken another route, which is great. I love that, and it feels like a DSLR with a mirrorless inside it, so that there's room for the buttons, and the layout of the buttons is great. The balance when you put a big lens on the front is great. So I love it. I really enjoy it. I've just ordered the Olympus as well, the new Olympus Mark III.
Okay.
I normally shoot with 3 platforms. Currently, I've got 4 if you include the E-mount, but I'll probably get rid of the last bit of that. So I normally like to shoot with 3. I'm a great believer in shoot what is good for the job, not shoot what is good for the brand.
Okay.
So when I want to go out, I need to have a good weatherproof camera with a great seal, good optics, and something which isn't going to break if I drop it, or isn't going to decide it's not going to stop working after it gets a bit wet or condensation. And that was a problem that I had with some of the other brands that I tried to do adventure photography with. So I chose the Lumix platform just recently for that need.
Okay.
A lot of the travel stuff, if I just wanted to throw something in the backpack, a day pack, the Z6 comes with me. I took both that and the Sony A99 II, which was a great camera. And to be honest, I probably would have stayed on the Sony A99 II had there'd have been new A-mount lenses come out. To be honest, it was a perfect.
Yeah, I remember the Alpha, the 77s, the 55s, the 99s. They had a whole double digit series that I liked as well.
Yeah, I had the A99 too, and some of these shots that you're seeing when Alaska were taken with that particular one was taken with the Sony A99 II with the Tamron 16-35 SP lens on it, and I absolutely loved that combination. For me, it was great. That was taken with the Sony. That was taken with the a 70-400 SSM2 on the A99 II. Now, people think, well, why are you shooting with a zoom lens for doing landscapes? This landscape was pretty. The interesting part was so close to the center of the frame. Shooting that with a wide, everything would have just looked lost. So in the original shot of that, it's actually a very, very wide shot, and that's a very tight crop in the middle of probably about 25% of the entire image is used for that. And that 70 to 400 enabled me to get a bit closer, so I wasn't losing a crazy amount of pixels when I wanted to do the crop. That's been a popular picture to sell online as well. So that was with the Z6, and then one of the other reasons I chose the Z6 as a secondary platform for me was its low light performance. I mean, this was taken at ISO 8000. So that's from a helicopter traveling at maybe 30 mile an hour going round in a loop. Wow. With the city behind, and being able to capture that at ISO 8000 with being able to stop it at 250th I think it was f 5.6 maybe.
Wow, that's quite a memory you got there. You can recall all the settings.
Yeah, well, with these, the night photography from a helicopter, normally I've got go-to settings, so I normally remember them because you've got to dial them into the camera before I take off, because I don't like changing settings when I'm up there. Now with night photography particularly, anything above ISO 8000 becomes unusable, but there's enough information in there that you can still pull out a bit of detail without it going completely crazy. But I really like that shot. That was a lot of fun, and I took some friends of mine up from Fly Nigh On in New Jersey last October. That was taken. So, and the best time for night for particularly for doing aerial photography is going very early spring before the heat comes, because as soon as the heat comes in New York, there's lots of haze, and it's very difficult to remove from some images. So yeah, I like going when it's a bit more crisp and a bit cold, but make sure you put gloves on because it gets colder when you're up in the air.
Yeah. The conditions in California can sometimes be similar, which is what makes some of these middle of the country shots so nice, is that the conditions are more stable in the smaller towns or outside of the bigger cities. Do you have trouble keeping track of all the features and all the settings in all the different cameras and all the different lenses that you use?
Not with, the only one I struggled with was the Sony email. Now, when you look at the way that the button groups are laid out and the way that they're placed on the Nikon and the Lumix, there is a dedicated button for changing the exposure, changing the ISO, and they're all on the top, and they're easily found with a finger and a roll on the back of your thumb.
Okay.
Now, on the Lumix particularly, you can actually configure those buttons to be either a one press and roll of the wheel, or a hold and then a roll of the wheel, or a press and a change of the roll of the wheel, and then depress it again to turn the option off. Now, with the Sony E-mount, I don't get any of those options whatsoever. And there's only 2 buttons on top, not 3, so I can't change the ISO. I can't change everything else. I've got to set the buttons up manually to do that. And then I just found it very difficult to get used to. Yeah, with the Z6 and the A99 III and the Lumix, the buttons were almost in a very similar place. So in terms of my muscle memory, to retrain it again, it was very little.
Right.
You know, very, very little changes. And the great thing about a lot of these new mirrorless cameras is that in the EVF, you've got the little, you've got the your Q button, if you like, or your I button. It always puts that bar across the middle. And in all those mirrorless cameras, you can change them to be exactly the same. They can mirror each other. So my Lumix looks pretty much like the same as my old Sony A99 II is when I look through the EVF, and the same with the Z6. So everything's in the same place. So that's the great thing about some of these mirrorless. I don't have to worry about it so much. But it's the button layout is the biggie for me. I don't have to worry about retraining myself too much, because the buttons on those particular 2 cameras are very, very similar, or they're not too dissimilar that I have to go and think, oh shit, I'm going to miss the button on that.
Right. And you know, I've had a hard enough time transitioning from brand, one brand to another, and I've not done that much. I've done maybe once or twice, and sometimes even within the cameras, if you buy a different camera, the buttons may be at a different place. But I talk to a lot of photographers that shoot on multiple cameras, and it would be overwhelming for me, because it's, I think, sometimes hard enough, depending on the environment that you're in getting the camera to execute on the vision that you have and to make sure that all the settings are right, and doing all of that fast. And so when you're dealing with multiple cameras, it's a new level of admiration that I have for people like you that can do it so seamlessly with so many different cameras and put the gear to work without, sort of making it seem like it's the other way around. So kudos.
Particularly with shooting things like, the helicopter is a real great example. It's a friend of mine, Jody. That was the night I took him up. And the biggest thing about doing anything which is related to you having a very short space of thinking time, whether it be in a helicopter or in the water, any of that kind of adventure photography, is once you get the settings in the camera, let the camera do some of the thinking. So particularly with some of the surf stuff, I tell the camera roughly the information that I want it to know. Okay, I want to shoot at ISO. That was ISO 8000 as well. I don't want to go above ISO 8000. Everything else I'm going to control, or I'm going to control the shutter speed, but don't go above ISO 8000. So work within those limits. So when you put that information into the camera, is that it takes that element of thought process away from you. Mm-hmm. So a less ability to screw up many of the shots, just from a not necessarily from a composition, but from the technical aspect in the background of how you're going to get it done. So in terms of doing aerial photography, there's some real good tricks that you can learn. So before you get up in the helicopter, to work out the shutter speed, for example, I would do things like, just to check that I've got my shutter speed right, is while the rotators are sitting there in idle, just take a few frames and make sure you can make them stop. And it's roughly about 1/500. And then you'll get some great shots going forward. making sure you've got everything crisp, because you don't know how fast that helicopter is going to be going forward, and you've also going to be competing with how much downforce you've got coming from the blade. So that can create a lot of shake. But when you're shooting around about 250 or 500, it eliminates that completely. So there are a few things that you can do to work out what you're going to be doing from a setting perspective. But I always say make sure that you're prepared from the setting, particularly if you know what environment you're going to be going into, because it just takes some of that thought process away. But that's just trial and error, right? Some people are going to want to shoot in a certain way, but if you're going to do something, make sure you do it more than once.
And no, you're not bragging and you're downplaying it, but it is hard, because you've got to know what each camera allows you to do. Some cameras have 2 types of ISOs that are optimal. Some cameras only have 1. Some brands support certain features and some don't.
Right.
And so it does take some skill to do that as well, which you do well. You've been doing workshops in photography, and I know that, again, you teach different kinds of photography, but you've been hosting these Alaska tours for a while. So I was hoping you'd give everybody a sense, from a big picture, what the tours are like, and then we can chat a little bit about them.
Right. So one of the reasons that we started making the tours was for a few reasons. One, that when I wanted to go to Alaska for the first time, I find it very difficult to find something which was going to be built for a photographer, that wasn't necessarily going to be in a complete workshop environment, and it needed to be somewhere fairly unique. There's a ton of workshops out there that would take you to one particular place, like Clark National Park, for example, to go and see the bears at the waterfalls. There's a lot of those where they go for one specific place. So with our tour, when we put it together, we wanted to make sure it was fairly flexible. We wanted to go where the bears were, which can be in many different places. And so, and we wanted to have it multi-part. So with our tours, people come to Kodiak Island, and then we pick them up by float plane, and they would give them a roughly about 45 minutes flight to the boat, which is captained by Paul there. You can see him in the orange, and that picture there, you can see him sitting in the grass. And he's got very good knowledge about where bears are within Katmai National Park. Now, we are one of the few companies that have got access to Katmai National Park by boat and got permission to land pretty much anywhere we want. And that gives us something really unique, because we can go where the bears are going. They don't really go to too many of the same places on a day-by-day basis. They move. So having that knowledge and being able to work with particularly some of the locals that we work with, they're able to tell us exactly where they are. So we can move the boat to exactly where we need to be. And that means we put the skiff down on the back, and then we go and land in the Katmai National Park, and then we can hike to wherever we need to go. Now, as you can see from some of these pictures, the conditions can change quite quickly.
Right.
They can go from beautifully sunny, is where I think there's one of the shots there with the float plane as we were doing a transfer to the boat. It was an absolutely beautiful sunny day, and then literally by walking for a little while, we can be absolutely, the heavens will open and mist will come along, and it will feel like a whole different country that you're in the space of sort of 10 minutes. So all the coastal areas, particularly in that part of Alaska where the warm air meets the cold air, it can change very quickly. And so that was us just going up by one of the rivers just to look for some of the bears there. That was a particularly harsh day, so everyone's got covers on their backpacks, apart from one guy. And we're just having to make sure you cover up properly. Now, that looks fairly close. There are some times where you have to stand your ground and let the bear do its thing. You let them know they're there. You talk to it. Hey, bear, we're not any danger to you. How you doing? And the bear will know you're there, and he will just carry on walking by.
That's awful close, yeah.
Yes, you have to stand your ground, let them know you're there. Talk amongst yourselves at an audible tone. We always have a bear naturalist with us as well.
Okay.
And so they
ask about that.
Yeah, so sometimes we even have two. So we will always make sure that we're completely up to date on what's happening with the bears, and we'll always have someone with us. We've got satellite phones for safety and all that kind of good stuff. We make sure that we're super safe, and we've got people with us and experts that know exactly what they're talking about. There's Paul, he's the captain of the boat, and he's the one that takes us out to these remote places. So he's an amazing fountain of knowledge. He really is.
Have you had any close encounters that got a little sketchy?
No, never. There is a picture there. If you go a few along, actually, I think it's the next picture along. You're going to see one.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's close. So
That's close.
there was a bunch of us. We were all tight. We're sitting fairly close together. That bear was close to us. Now the problem is the bear wasn't showing any kind of aggressive behaviour. It got its food. We weren't sitting between the food and the bear. So we were sitting very close together. The bear knew we were there. He wasn't bothered by us whatsoever. And we were a good 200 yards apart before that bear approached us.
Uh-huh.
So we'd stood up and we'd backed up twice on the bank. But just round the corner on the left-hand side, there was a kind of a pinhead there. This bear particularly came round the corner, and he was within, I would say, probably about 30, 40 feet of us. And we stood our ground and we talked, and he just come along and just wanted to check us out and have a sniff and walked off. And that was it, no drama. So the guy there was looking particularly nervous, but we're saying, don't run, whatever you do, sit tight and talk, pretend he's not there. And he got a bit twitchy, but it was fine. We've never had any issues with bears. We've always given them a lot of respect and a lot of kindness. And
that seems like you have to up your shutter speed a couple notches to make up for the jitterness of the.
Right. Yeah. 7 stops a shake was fully tested on every single one of those shots. But the bears. The bears are fairly used to humans being around. They're not bothered by us as long as they don't see us as a threat and people start feeding them. It's not a problem. It's the people that feed them that are the bigger issue, and that's when they're endangering bears. So that's the Alaska Dawn. That's the boat that Paul runs, and that's one of the places where we landed.
I imagine everywhere you look is a postcard there.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, the first time that if people are going to come with us, we do in June. The summer season is very short in Alaska, less than 12 weeks. So the first time people come with us and they sit on the boat and they see the midnight sun, and the sun kind of goes down and it kind of just stays below the horizon with a permanent red and orange sky. It's very odd. It is very odd when people see that. And you get the reflection off the water. It looks absolutely stunning. But it's picture card perfect everywhere we go. It really is great. And Alaska's so. The other thing that I would recommend, if you don't want to come on a tour with us through Alaska, do a road trip. Don't go on one of these package tours. Do your own road trip. Book your own bits and pieces for it. There's a ton of places to explore within Alaska. This was taken in Seward up on the glacier. This was working with some of the race dogs up there. They were a lot of fun. That was in Denali National Park. There's so many things that you can do there. You can go all the way up to Dead Horse to see the polar bears as well. That's right in the north.
Uh-huh.
You go there. I would probably say go there March time if the road's open. It's worth going up there then because the glaciers there. So this is a good example of global warming in Alaska. So this glacier is normally completely closed off. People go hiking. They get a helicopter up to the top of the glacier and hike down. But if you go in September time now, that's stopped purely for the demonstration you can see there. The ice is becoming more and more unstable. Now that looks like a small hole. That hole is probably about 80 feet wide.
Wow.
We took that up fairly high up from a helicopter going over. I was leaning out over the front of that, and it's cold, very, very cold. But that's big. So you may not see that till it's too late if you're hiking over the top of that glacier. There's some more bears there. That bear there in the middle, so you can see the differences between the sizes of the bear. So that bear there in the middle, that's the one, the coastal brown bear. They're the ones that have an almost limitless supply of food. So they're fish. So they gorge themselves. They get very, very big and fat. That's where the other one that you saw there, he was in Denali National Park, and they're just eating berries and ground squirrels and stuff. So they're not eating anywhere near as much. So they're a lot smaller. But you can see the difference in size. The difference is probably about 300-400 pounds in terms of their mass.
Yeah, I also noticed that it seems like, there's planes, trains, and automobiles. There's all kinds of modes of transportation, and you can get around through different ways. Are those also part of the tour, or are those just some of your personal trips?
So with with our tour, you'll be doing a float plane, and you'll be on the boat. We also do kayaking as well. We've got kayaks on there that people can go out, and the cool thing about going out on the kayak from the boat is that you'll see a lot of the nautical wildlife. So you'll get a sea otter that will just pop up next to you, or a seal that may want to come and have a look. Now, depending where we go on the boat, you'll get to see a lot of whales. You can go out on the kayak, on the sea kayak, and that's a lot of fun. But someone that isn't probably very experienced at kayaking, we wouldn't recommend it, because it would only take a whale to come out and put on a bit of a show. Next thing you know, you're in the drink with it. But with some of these trips, now I wanted to explore a lot more of Alaska. I've seen quite a lot of it. Now, the road trip that I recommend is up on my blog. Now, you can go all the way from Seward and all the way right up to Dead Horse pretty easily by car, and I would recommend doing that, certainly. I think the minimum time that you would need to see as much of the country that you can get around by road, probably about 3 weeks. 2 weeks you can do it in a bit of a pinch, but to see everything you would need 3, and maybe even 4 if you wanted to go down towards the Canadian border, down on the southeast part of the state.
How long are your workshops? Are they 2 to 3 weeks?
They're 5 days, so we recommend to come in for 7. So you get to Kodiak Island the day before the tour starts. I do a presentation. We talk about bear safety. We issue any gear that we've got out, like waders, that kind of thing. And then the next day we pick you up by boat, and then we fly you out to we pick you up by plane, we take you out on the boat, and you live on the boat for 5 days. So you're completely away from everybody. Your mobile phone won't work for 5 days. We cook for you. All the food is included. You get to experience some of my chefing skills, which mostly good. That's all I'm saying. So the feedback I get is mostly good. Thankfully, my photography is probably better than my cooking skills, which is fine. I'm fine with that. So you'll get meals 3 times a day, all the drinks included, non-alcoholic, of course. And then after we're done on the 5th day, we fly you back to Kodiak, and we have an evening talk, and we start editing some of the pictures together, and we work out what we like, what we didn't like, any questions, that kind of thing. And then on the last day, you can fly back to Anchorage, or you can stay on Kodiak and explore Kodiak Island. And the reason we do the tour over 5, but we recommend staying for 7, is that the flights from Anchorage are fairly limited, so they get in fairly late. So we recommend coming in a day before or 2 days before the tour starts, so we can do the presentation and get everyone climatized and ready for the tour. Because it can get there's a lot of safety things to think about, stuff in the plane, stuff on the boat, life jackets, where they are, all that kind of stuff, as well as talking about some of the variety of wildlife and what you're going to encounter, all that kind of good stuff. So we try and cover as much as we possibly can in those sort of 2-3 hours, and everyone gets acquainted with each other as well, so no one's walking onto the boat. That's the other thing. The sleeping quarters on the boat are intimate, I would put it. There's a couple of bunks. People will be sharing a room and sharing bathrooms and stuff. By the time people leave, they're on a lot more than first name terms by the time they go. So that's fine. But yeah, you're in each other's pockets for 5 days. So that's one thing to think about before you come. So
Dan, I had a question. Like in this picture, I was puzzled because these don't look like water planes, but they're basically on a beach. Yeah. So what's the story here?
Yeah, so this is Hallow Bay. That sits on the McNeil River Game Reserve, or Game Sanctuary, I should say. There's no hunting there most of the year. Anyway, so that's about an hour flight out from Homer, and you take off and land on the beach. I've got some video footage of it somewhere. I can't remember what I did with it. But you fly over a volcano and you land on the beach. Those are big wheels. They're huge. And you'll be surprised. You really don't feel how bumpy that beach is when you land on it. I mean, if you drove over it in the car, you'll feel it pretty bad, I would have thought. But on the plane, you don't feel it. It's a very gentle takeoff and landing. But yeah, that's beautiful. And that's the only way you can get to Hallow Bay is that's that picture there that you can see behind me. That's the only way you can get there is by landing on the beach like that. But yeah, it's a fun experience. And that's the helicopter up onto the glacier. That's probably about a 10-15 minute helicopter ride going up there, where you get all the huskies up there. That's a beautiful ride too. It's only 10-15 minutes up from Seward, but it's worth doing for sure. And you really notice the temperature drop. Geez, when you get up there, the temperature's sort of 20 degrees cooler than it was in Seward. But
so we got a question about gear.
Yeah.
In the Alaska tours, what camera equipment do you recommend people bring? Because obviously people may have different cameras, different lenses. Right. They don't probably want to bring everything. Plus they've got to bring jackets and that kind of thing. Yeah. So can you give an overview of the kind of gear, both wardrobe and camera gear, that you suggest people bring? Yeah.
So bring as little as you can in terms of your camera gear. So if you've got something like a 70-400, it may not be optically the sharpest lens in your bag, but it's the most versatile that you're going to have. So bring that. If you are insisting on bringing primes, then bring anything up from a 200-400 for a long, a long lens, or you can always use an extender if you really wanted to. For that. And I would certainly bring a ultra wide zoom, a 16-35, for two reasons. One is that there's going to be so much landscape you're going to capture. Also, it's for things like when the midnight sun comes, you're going to want to get a lot of that sky. For 35mm, you can get great landscapes too, as well as you can at ultra wide. And also, if you are going to get on the kayak and tying it in with a bit of product placement, I guess, you might want to wrap up your camera nice and easy when you get in the kayak, just in case you want to take one of the, get a picture with the dome with the half and half under the water and half on top with some of the marine life that comes to visit. Everything waterproof. Make sure you've got waterproof trousers. We supply Alaska sneakers, as they're called, or waders to everybody else. Okay. So we supply those, but as much waterproof stuff as you got, because you're going to get wet. No two ways about it. You might think you've got brilliant sunshine for a week. You're going to get wet. Absolutely. So yeah, lots of waterproof stuff. The highest resolution camera that you've got. If you're going to thinking about buying something with a high resolution, go buy it. Now think about it as this. So if you are going to go out and buy some new kit, make sure that it's geared towards wildlife photography, because you're going to be taking a lot of it. If you're going to be having something that's not necessarily geared to it so much, you may struggle a little bit, particularly with things like making sure you've got that crisp image. So I would think about those things.
How about storage? Like a hard drive, multiple memory cards? Is there a place pretty much every day that people can download to, or are you sort of confined without internet access?
Yeah, so we do recommend bringing maybe a few drives, a few USB drives. I think I've got one here, but yeah, maybe one of a couple of terabytes, and bring a few of them. And make sure that you copy the images to each one, so if anything happens. And they're fairly small and pocketable, and you're not going to necessarily shoot anything more than 2 terabytes of images during the course of your stay over 5 days. But I would certainly recommend doing that, and don't worry about editing while you're there. download them onto your laptop or onto your USB drive, and then worry about it later. There are some solutions that people bring that enable you to back up immediately to a hard drive, and that works perfectly as well. So it doesn't really matter either, as long as you've got something you can back up to and get it off your SD cards. You can keep them on SD cards if you want. I've moved over to the QXD format now, and they're pretty solid, so I would keep them. But once you shot with them, put them in a waterproof container for sure.
Right. Brilliant. Okay. Anything else that I didn't ask you that that you wanted to mention about the tours, or that people should know?
You're going to be having long days. You're going to be up at 6 a.m. and you're probably not going to be going anywhere near your bunk until 10 o'clock. If the midnight sun is going to bother you, bring some tablets that may help you sleep, that may knock you out, because it will keep you up if you're not used to it. It could be a bit of a game changer, or bring something to block the light out. You're going to be down deck anyway, so but it can still be confusing. I would do that. Waterproof gear, like I said, I can't stress that enough. We talked about
how about nausea or sunscreen or bug repellent? Any?
Yes, the bug repellent 100%, and even bring a net. I've got one. I think I have one here. Where's it go? A head net if it's really going to bother you, because particularly when we get out to the just past the riverbeds and we start getting out onto some of the plateaus, there's a lot of bugs around. So I would bring a net if it's really going to bother you that much. By the time you start talking to people, you're talking to the bear. Next thing you know, you've eaten 20 mosquitoes. It could be a bit of a problem. So if that's going to bother you, wear a net, definitely.
Got it. All right. Well, listen, I could talk for hours. In fact, we do. We've done a couple of podcasts and chats before. We will continue to do it. I'll have to invite you back so we can talk about a different topic. Maybe
sure.
we can talk about some of your landscape photography or commercial work that you've done. I wanted to thank you once again for being with us. It's always fun chatting with you, and we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll look out for any questions and I'll get them answered.
So thank you so much, Dan. Stay safe, and hopefully I'll see you soon. I know we had some trips planned ourselves for things like surfing and some sports stuff. So hopefully after this madness subsides a bit and things return to normal, we'll get a chance to be together in person.
Yes, mate. I'm dying to take you up kayaking in Alaska. I'm dying to take you up there because I think you'll find that's a lot of fun.
You and I both.
All right,
Thanks
mate.
again, Dan. Be safe.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.